Okay, so we have quite a bit to do today. There were a bunch of you that were not here last time when I handed back the exam, so I was kind enough to bring them again. So if you didn't get yours, you can come up in just a second and get those. I want to ask, while you're still paying attention to me before we get to the end of class, there were a number of you that said you wanted to talk to me about your article reviews. And I said I would make myself available after class, and some of you didn't want to come at 7:30 in the morning, which is when my office hours start. So is there anybody in here who wants to talk to me about their article review after class? Okay, I want to make sure I'm asking because I don't want anybody to think I'm ignoring you. But there were about 3 people that said they wanted to ask about grades in the article review, and so if you want to do that, now's the opportunity. I mean, you're welcome to come to my office hours, but I realize that people don't really want to come at 7:30. All right, so what we're going to do is I will, for those of you who want your exams back for the second one, I'll give those to you. Then we're going to talk about managing products and brands, and then we'll move into, I believe, services on Thursday. So if you want to come up. So we started talking about new products last time and the innovative process and why it's important to continually develop new products, because companies will have to face increasing challenges, and people's preferences and tastes change as technology changes. As we look at that environmental scan, what's going on out there impacts obviously business. And so we've got to constantly be developing these new products, and we talked about that idea. And then once we develop them, we have to manage them. So products have, like people, they have a life cycle. And it depends on what type of life cycle or how short or long the life cycle is. It depends on the type of product. So you have the introduction of a product, the growth, maturity, and then decline phase. So in the introduction, you may not have a lot of competitors. When Coca-Cola entered the market over 100 years ago, there were not a lot of soft drinks. Most people drank, at the beginning of the 20th century, what did they drink? Tea and coffee and milk and things like that. So there was this introductory phase. As people recognize, and this of course happens with Henry Ford and the Ford Model T, as people recognize that there's money to be had, more competitors enter the market during the growth stage. Then you have maturity, and then decline. Now the strategy for dealing with a product depends on which stage it's in. And so let's think about Coca-Cola. Let's think about Coca-Cola. I was going to bring up the Coca-Cola brands again so that we could look at it. Which stage do you think that Coca-Cola is in the United States? Who says maturity? Why do you think it's in the mature phase? It's what?
It's not growth and it's not decline. So
You don't think it's declining?
I don't think so.
You don't think it's declining? Let's look at, I wish the brands would come up. That's what happened. Oh, here we go. Finally. Okay, so here's all of the Coke brands that you can see up there. I asked you last time if any of you knew what tab was. That's obviously one that's in the harvesting phase. It was this diet drink that was really horrific, and it was taken over and populated by things like Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi. And now, what would you say Diet Coke is in? You think that's in intro, growth, maturity, or decline? You're saying decline. Why do you think it's in decline?
I don't know, it's like the whole aspartame thing. Some people are trying to veer away from stuff that has artificial sweeteners.
I was reading an article in the Harvard Medical Journal about why Coca-Cola is not good for your body. And all of the things that you can use Coca-Cola for besides a soft drink. Things like it works wonders in cleaning acid off of battery cables. Pour a little Coca-Cola on your battery cables and it will take that acid right off of it. What else? You know, so it's got all these problems. It's highly carbonated. It's got a high acidity. What happens with the acidity in your teeth? We've now come up with products to deal with the acidity in the foods that we eat. What's that? Enamel protective toothpaste to deal with things like Coca-Cola, which has a high acid content. I think that Coca-Cola is actually in the United States in the decline stage because people have become aware of the negative impacts in health that it has and the problems associated with it. Diet Coke is being taken over. What was introduced as an alternative to Diet Coke? Coke Zero, which actually tastes, I don't like it. How many of you drink Coke? If you drink Diet, how many of you drink Coke Zero? How many of you drink Diet Coke? Why do you not drink Coke Zero? Years after years of developing a taste for that sort of bitter aspartame aftertaste of Diet Coke, Coke Zero is too sweet. When I first switched from regular Coke to Diet Coke, I would take it as a treat every once in a while to drink a real Coke. And now I drink a real Coke and I think, oh my God, it's like syrup. It's awful. I want my Diet Coke. And Coke Zero has that same taste. But they've come up with a new product that tastes better, tastes more like the original Coke. So for people who hate that aftertaste of Diet Coke, they can do it. But I think what's happened in this market, broadly speaking in the United States, is that it's entering decline because people recognize that this is not necessarily a health product. We have reached a point in this planet where the number of obese people actually outnumber the number of starving people on the planet for the first time in history. And why is it that we have an enormous amount of obesity? Well, how many calories are in a regular Coke? In a 12-ounce can of Coke? It's over 100.
I know in the bottle it's like 240.
Yeah, if you get the 20-ounce bottle. I mean, I think it's over 100. How many of those do you drink a day? 3, that's 300 calories. What's a meal? If you're dieting, they say a meal is 300 calories, 300, 400 calories. So you have one Coke, you've had 1/3 of a meal right there. And so Coke is coming up with new products, and what do you think is becoming more popular among health-conscious people in places like the United States and Europe? Well, it's the what?
Vitamin water.
It's the vitamin water, the watered products. So Coke has Evian. That is their water brand. I never thought you would see water being more expensive than a gallon of gas, but you do. If you figure out what you'd spend per gallon if you bottled up all those bottled water. How many of you drink bottled water instead of getting a Diet Coke out of the vending machine? Why? It's better for you. So I think it's in the decline stage. What you're going to do, now it may be in the late maturity stage actually, because I don't think Coca-Cola is going to engage in harvesting it yet. They're still advertising it heavily. Generally what happens in the decline stage is you start reducing the advertising. You look at that Boston Consulting Group matrix and those strategies that you can think about. If you have a cash cow, which is you have high market share but low growth potential, what do you think about doing? Well, you think about starting to harvest that and using those funds to fund other things that are becoming more popular. So the products have this lifestyle. Now Coca-Cola's lifestyle, or lifecycle, not lifestyle, lifecycle has been really long. Other products have short life cycles that look like that. What kind of products have quick introduction and rapid maturity and decline. What?
The hoverboard.
The hoverboard. You think the hoverboard is it's gonna enter? What's happened with the hoverboard? It's a dangerous product,
Yeah, they're blowing up.
and they blow up. Well, not only that, but have any of you tried one?
Yeah.
You have to have exceptionally good balance to stay on it, and that's a problem. Fads generally have life cycles like this. Although a fad may also have, and it's one of the things that's kind of interesting to me, it may come and go like that. One of the things that's happened with clothing is that it's a miracle. I go through them all, and all of those hideous colors that were popular in the 1970s when I was a kid, and those styles are back, and I just want to vomit all over the place because it's horrible. But fads come and go, and that they may have peaks and troughs. If you have something that requires a long learning curve, that will extend the life cycle. So life cycles can be short, they can come back. Things that are trending now may fall out of favor and come back again. One of the things that started to come back that I've noticed that was a fad were the skinny ties, and I've actually started to see the weave ties come back in style. And again, I'm horrified by that movement. And the thin lapels and the very sleek look. So those things can go out and come back. And what you're going to do is, depending on where you are in the life cycle, depends on what you're going to do in terms of that investment or strategy with regard to more development, harvesting, or engaging in other research and development opportunities. So when you think about these things, you look at the life cycle and see where you're at. Brand scholars, now once you develop the product and you've got a brand, branding scholars will tell you that Kevin Lane Keller, and this is a test question, Kevin Lane Keller is a big branding scholar, says that branding is the most important decision a business will make. Again, I think you should be able to explain away the entire universe from the vantage point of your discipline. And so branding scholars argue that this is the most important decision a business will make. Why is that? Because it identifies your goods from competitors. Now, I don't know if that's true. I've taken, when I was in the private practice of law, I've taken a lot of companies that came up with really great brand names and really great logos into bankruptcy. And why did I take them into bankruptcy as their bankruptcy attorney? Because they had really crappy products or services. They had a really good design. They found some graphic artist out there who could produce a really good logo and a cute brand name for them, and they just didn't last because they didn't meet the customer's needs in terms of differentiating their products and services from other companies' products and services. And so even though they had a good brand name and good brand image, I think that ultimately whether you produce good products and services matters to customers. And so I don't know that it's the most important, but it is certainly an important element of the business process. And it's so important, in fact, that it is one of the three major types of intellectual property that we protect in the United States. And unlike the other two major types of intellectual property, it's one that doesn't expire. So if you write a book and you put it out and you have it published, you will get something called a copyright in that book, which gives you the exclusive right to control the distribution and reproduction of that material. Copyright is for a set term of years, and after that term of years, what happens to your copyright? Generally, in the United States, copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. Or if it's a work for hire, from the date of publication, and then I think it's 100 and something odd years, because that's the Disney rule. Disney had Mickey Mouse. They created Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse was about to go into the public domain. And Disney, and we're not talking about the Mickey that you all know and love. We're talking about the Steamboat Willie Mickey that was about to go into the public domain. Michael Eisner went balls to the wall and contacted every member of Congress. He made $535 million that year as the CEO of Disney. He contacted every member of Congress. This will show you the power of money in politics, and got the Copyright Act extended to extend the life of Disney's copyright on Mickey Mouse. Now, it applied to everybody else. It wasn't just them. But there's a rule in intellectual property that says Disney always wins. Disney didn't want their copyright to expire on Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie, which none of you would even watch today to go into the public domain, but they did. That copyright will expire at some point in time. Patents are the other form of intellectual property. They're important in the new product process and development of medical devices, and medical pharmaceuticals are a huge industry in the United States, and that is protected by intellectual property and patents. And those are filed with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and those also have an expiration date. So that's what happens when drugs become generic, and you get them for a lot cheaper. When the patent expires and other people can start manufacturing them, and they become a lot cheaper. Trademark is the one intellectual property, and it is associated with branding that does not expire ever, unless your trademark becomes generic. So you can file a trademark. You go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and this is what I did when I was a corporate attorney. I filed trademarks for the company that I worked for, the American Education Corporation, and you can do trademark searches to figure out whether or not you can get a trademark. And this is one that I filed and registered, and the company has abandoned it since. The Advanced Learning Management System, which was our higher education product development line. So you file these and you get a trademark, and you get it for as long as you maintain your business and you keep the product in service, and provided that the trademark does not become what's called generic. So this is an example, again, of how you have to integrate these things, those environmental scans that we look at with what we're talking about in terms of branding, and this is the regulatory environment in terms of how you protect your brand name once you get it. Coca-Cola has a trademark that's registered, which is why you see the R logo at the bottom of Coca-Cola, and it is estimated that Coca-Cola is the most valuable brand on the planet. It is the most valuable brand on the planet. Now, your brand name may become generic, and you may lose it if it becomes generic for a whole category of products or services. And so Coca-Cola does this where they absolutely protect their brand name. When you go to a restaurant and you say, "I'll have a Coke," and they don't serve Coca-Cola, what will they say? Is Pepsi okay? If they don't, Coca-Cola has little spies out there that go into restaurants to search, because they do not want Coca-Cola to become generic for carbonated, caramelized beverage. Because if it did, it could become generic. And this is the case called the Murphy-Bed case, in which one actually did become generic. The Murphy-Bed, you all don't know what these are. They've started selling them again at a place called IKEA. How many of you have been to IKEA in Dallas? And they have these apartments for very small living. Have you gone through and walked? It's kind of interesting to see what they can come up with, for living in 700 feet. One of the things that you can do is you can have a Murphy bed. The Murphy Bed Company manufactures beds that come out of the wall. They're not very popular in Oklahoma, where we have lots of room and we have separate bedrooms for ourselves and our children, but in places like, New York City, they're extraordinarily popular, where you might be living in a studio and your bedroom not only doubles as your bedroom, but also your living room, dining room, kitchen, television room, and all of that. And so you could fold the beds up into the wall. Other people started manufacturing them, and people generically just referred to them as a category as Murphy Bed, and Murphy Bed lost their trademark. And so Coca-Cola doesn't want you to do that, so they can fight and make sure that they police their trademark so that it doesn't become generic for a whole category of product, which is the caramelized beverage, soft drink industry. So you have to protect your trademark, but if you do protect it, it does not become extinct and you don't lose it so long as you continue to put products out there, unlike copyright and trademark, which will evaporate at some point. So we protect these, and the level of protection depends on what kind of brand name you have. And this is the test question. There are generic brands. Generic brands never get protection. So what's a generic brand that you could never protect? Huh? Kleenex? Kleenex is a brand name. And Kleenex doesn't really want you to say, give me a Kleenex. It's a facial tissue. Q-tips? That's a brand name. Aspirin. Aspirin is a generic.
Flying disc.
What?
Flying disc.
Flying disc. Okay. That's a generic. You get no protection for generic names. Aspirin.
Frisbee is a frisbee.
Yeah, you never get protection for things that represent an entire class of goods. The next category of protection goes to suggestive brands or suggestive trademarks. And Coca-Cola actually starts out as a suggestive brand. And you do not get trademark protection on the principal register of the United States Patent and Trademark Office for a suggestive brand unless the brand name acquires secondary association in the mind of consumers. So why is Coca-Cola a suggestive, or why did it start out as a suggestive brand? Or a descriptive brand? It was a descriptive brand. Why was it descriptive?
They used cocoa.
They used cocaine in the original product, so it was a cocaine-based cola. So it was a descriptive brand, but Coca-Cola obviously acquired meaning within the market to become more than that. It no longer contains cocaine, and so they have principal registry protection. They also can not just protect their trade name, which is Coca-Cola, and the fancy script that goes along with Coca-Cola. What else can you protect with trademark? You can also protect trade dress. So what is Coca-Cola's trade dress that's protected? I used to do this experiment in my Principles of Marketing class where I'd have somebody come up, I'd blindfold them, and I would hand them a bottle, and they could always identify the bottle as being a Coca-Cola bottle because Coca-Cola's bottle is distinctive, it is trademarked, and you get trade dress on that. It's that sort of hourglass-shaped bottle. No one else can use that bottle shape for Coca-Cola. The highest form of protection, and the one that almost always a priori leads to placement on the principal register, is called arbitrary and fanciful. An arbitrary and fanciful design. What's an arbitrary and fanciful design? Apple. Is there anything that connects apples to computers? No. Why have that logo on a computer? I mean, if you wanted a generic logo for a computer, you'd have what? A computer as the logo. You'd have a little keyboard and monitor as the logo. Apple is an arbitrary and fanciful brand. It gets protection on the principal register of the USPTO. So we protect brands, so they are enormously important. They are enormously valuable pieces of intellectual property that you can sell, and that brands have values. Now, once you've developed your brand, what are you going to do? Well, we can classify brands. So brands are any name, term, sign, symbol, or design that identify the goods or services of a seller. We have lots of brands that you can think of. McDonald's, Coca-Cola. And when I say these names, images automatically start coming to mind, don't they? When I say the name McDonald's, what do you think about? You think about French fries. Cheap, fast, consistent. Coca-Cola, what comes to mind? Huh? Toilet cleaner? That's the other, yes, it will actually take off stains. that are on toilet bowls as well. That was one of the things that they listed. Isn't that fascinating? How many of you think of polar bears? Christmas. The original, Coca-Cola, the non-communist drink, like Pepsi. Pepsi's a communist inferior product, and then there's good old-fashioned Coca-Cola. So the term, sign, symbol, or design that identifies the goods or services of a seller. Brands provide middle connection. So again, when we think about the integration of this stuff, we talked about segmentation, targeting, picking those groups out of the whole that we want to make a pitch to, and then positioning, and that's what brands do. They provide this middle connection in the mind of the consumer. They provide a position that you can think about. So when we say names like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, you get these visual images in your head. And positive branding can lead to enhanced company performance. Brands serve an important heuristic function in marketing. And what is that? They assist, when we talked about that consumer decision-making process, they oftentimes assist in that process by providing information shortcuts. So if I'm, thirsty and I want something that's, semi-sweet and carbonated and gives you a little pick-me-up, I think of Coca-Cola. Why? Well, it's got caffeine. And if you drink the original non-diet Coke, it's got sugar, which can be helpful, particularly if you're diabetic. You get a little low on your blood sugar, take a little too much insulin. So they can provide a consumer with shortcuts, information shortcuts about the brand. When you're traveling, why do you stop at McDonald's? It's fast, cheap, consistent, convenient. They have good bathrooms. When you go to Joe's Barbecue Shack in Pawnee, America, you don't know what you're going to get. It could be really good, or it could be god-awful. We went to Kansas City one time, years and years ago, and we were coming back through Joplin, Missouri, and the only place open in this little town was this local diner. And it was a negative sell from the word go. We walked in, and my mother says, "Oh my God, it's smoky in here." And the waitress who's working runs over and says, "Well, we have a non-smoking section, but I have to tell you, it wafts." It just permeates the whole thing. And so my mother said, "Well, at least it'll be good home-cooked meals." And, the waitress says, "Well, it ain't your mom's cooking." And she said, "And it ain't my cooking either." So I sit down and look at the menu, and I said, "Okay, well, what's good here? Eggs. He can do eggs, okay." Well, it wasn't breakfast. So I said, "I'll have a grilled cheese sandwich." "Oh, he can't expletive that up." Negative sell. That's not what you get at McDonald's, right? What do you get at McDonald's? You order a Big Mac, you know it's going to be 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun. The fries are going to be delicious. You go to the local diner, you might get it wafts. It ain't your mama's cooking. It ain't my cooking. He can do a grilled cheese sandwich, right? That's not exactly what you want. So McDonald's provides this nice heuristic, and then we know, you got to pee, you got to stop, you need food, you're hungry. It's going to be the same. It's not going to take decades to get. How many of you have stopped at some little off-the-road, beaten path place, and it took you forever to get served or to get your food? Think about Ishans in Okarchi. How many of you have been there? Was there a line out the door? Every time I've been, if you go after 5 o'clock, there's a line out the door, hard to get in. And if you like fried chicken, it's pretty good. It's pretty decent fried chicken and okra and white bread. You got more selection at McDonald's, so it can assist in our decision-making process. In developing your brand, 2 scholars that you should know for the exam, Turley and Moore, it's Turlty, Moore, say there are a number of elements that you should have to have a successful brand in the development of the brand. It should be short. Think about really popular brands. They're all fairly short. Dell, Apple, what else? Nike, Reebok. One word, McDonald's. It should be easy to spell. Brooks Brothers. It's 3 words, 2 words. It's easy to spell. It's alliterative. What else? J. Crew. That's a name brand based off somebody's name. Dillard's, Macy's. Those are all easy to spell, short, easy to remember. Should be distinctive. What's distinctive about Coca-Cola? The script. What else is distinctive about Coca-Cola? The bottle, the packaging, the color. It's red, stands out. And it should not carry any negative associations. Now this is the one that can be problematic, because things that may not carry negative associations today might carry negative associations down the road. And if your trademark becomes morally suspect, you can also lose it. And you can lose protection. So with sports teams, what sports team is facing problems with their trademark? Redskins. When they developed that trademark, did it really have that many negative associations with it? Or were we perhaps just less sensitive to the ethnic diversity? You think we were less sensitive? Do you think the Native American population at the time they came up with the Redskins was morally offended? I don't know. But are they today? They've argued that they should lose their trademark protection. And lots of sports teams used to be named for various groups that now I think have an extraordinarily negative connotation. So what may have been acceptable in the past can actually be problematic in the future. Where I got my law degree, Oklahoma City University, used to be the Oklahoma City Chiefs. That was their mascot for the Oklahoma City University sports teams. And that became a negative connotation. What did the mascot look like? Well, it was a Native American with sort of what we think of as being the stereotypical large headdress was the mascot for Oklahoma City. They decided that was offensive to some people, and so they changed it to the Oklahoma City Stars. That became their mascot. The reason it became their mascot was because they have what's called the Gold Star Building, which is the tallest building on campus, and so they said we'll be the Oklahoma City Stars, and that's why they changed their mascot. But they thought it had a negative stereotype. What are some other ones that might have negative stereotypes in our modern, if you were to develop them today? I think, and what you see is if you look at the progression of the icon in Aunt Jemima syrup, I think you see a progression or Mrs. Buttersworth. I think initially those would be today seen as being extraordinarily, if you go back in time and look at the cookie jars that they came out with, the syrup bottles that they came out with for Aunt Jemima, I think they're racially offensive today. And so you can end up with something that didn't start out that way, but can have a negative connotation, and so you have to think about that. Coca-Cola could have had a negative connotation. When we went into our overwhelming, zealous prosecution of illegal drugs, Coca-Cola ran that risk. You know, because they kept the name Coca, which is derivative of the coca plant. And so I think they could have had that. But nobody, by that point in time, it had been so far attenuated from its origin that I don't think that anybody had it. But you can get these things that can become problematic. Now, the Redskins have said they're not going to change their mascot. Why? Should they? Oklahoma City did it. They've said, I think it's because it's the amount of money you have to engage in to go through a rebranding campaign to get something established. When the Oklahoma City Thunder were moved here, they went through that. But why did they want to go through that? Why did the investors, Aubrey McClendon, Tom Ward, and the others want to change the name?
So that wouldn't be compatible with the other city.
Yeah, they wanted to dissociate themselves from the old team. And so, but it requires building a brand new brand image. But they were relocating the team to Oklahoma. They wanted it to have a Oklahoma theme, and so they came up with it. And I actually thought at the time that they came up with the brand name that it was a horribly stupid name. I thought Oklahoma City Thunder was, at the time I thought, that's a really dumb name. First of all, how do you make it plural? You know? When the team comes on the field, they generally say, you know, here's your Seattle Seahawks, not Seattle Seahawk. How do you make Thunder plural? I don't know. I thought it was a dumb name. It's turned out to be, you know, a pretty good mascot for them. And so I was wrong on that one, but it shouldn't carry any negative associations. Turley and Moore further develop a typology of brands that you should know. And to that typology, I add one more category, and I wrote a paper about this that got published that said we need to expand the typology of brands. So there are descriptive brands. Again, from a standpoint of getting your brand name registered on the principal register to get protection for your brand name, you really don't want a descriptive brand, but we have lots of them in existence. Descriptive brands. And the categories can overlap, so you can have more than one category being applied to a various brand. And so, for example, First National Bank, which is a category that we'll talk about in a minute, is a descriptive brand to some extent. Lots of towns had First National Banks across the state. Why was that? You say First National Bank of Guthrie, First National Bank of Stillwater, First National Bank of Oklahoma City. In fact, there's still a large building in downtown Oklahoma City called the First National Bank Building. Why were they the First National Bank of Guthrie, Stillwater, Oklahoma City? Well, because they were the first nationally chartered banks to form when they settled Oklahoma in those various locations. And so, why would you say first? That's another type of brand. So you can have geographic reference brands. And this is First National as a geographic and a descriptive brand. Why would you say First National? What was that supposed to imply? Well, when we settled and we had First National Bank of Guthrie, it was to imply stability. We're the oldest. We're the first national bank. So we're obviously the oldest bank in Oklahoma City, right, of national charter. So it's to establish that kind of preeminence in the brand name. You can have person-based brands. You find these a lot in personal services, particularly with regard to things like law firms. Now, generally, these personal brand names, personal-based brand names, tend to violate the rules of it should be short, it should be easy to spell, it should be easy to remember. What are the names of the big law firms in Oklahoma City? Crowe and Dunlevy. Well, there's different ways you can spell Dunlevy. There are different ways you can spell Crowe. How do they spell it? Anybody know? C-R-O-W-E. There's Kelly, Conger, Herzog, Kevin, and Neville and Kaysen. Now you've got 5 names. And why isn't the law firms all have these long names? Well, because everybody wants to be a named partner. There's some prestige to that. These violate the short, distinctive, easy to spell, easy to remember. McAfee Taft is another one. Both of those gentlemen have long since deceased, but their name persists on the law firm. So person-based brands. You also see person-based brands with things like Dell. Dell was named after who? Who? Who's the company founder? You all are business majors and you don't know who the founder of Dell Computer is? Michael Dell. It's a name. It's named after the founder. You can have associative brands. International Grocers Association, IGA. What were those? Those are associative brands. Well, you used to have, and you still see them in little towns across the state. You still see IGAs, which are basically cooperatives that get together so that they can have the purchasing power in these little grocery stores or independent grocers. They can have the purchasing power of the larger firms. You still find them in locations where they can't support a Walmart. Although Walmart attempted to take over that market recently, but what's happened? Anybody know? And they did this in Luther. They established a store, and 9 months later they were going to go into little towns and have really stripped down versions of Walmart, neighborhood markets in these little towns, so that they could provide grocery stores. And what has Walmart decided to do? They've decided to close all of them. So the one in Luther was open for 9 months and it's already closed. And people in Luther are really upset because they gave up a soccer field to bring in Walmart, which they thought would increase tax-based revenues for the community. And then Walmart decided after 9 months to close those. But those international grocers, those are associative brands. Huh?
Walmart was supposed to replace the soccer field too.
Yes, they were. They were supposed to do that. Yep. That's one of the reasons that Walmart does not have a wonderful name in lots of communities. Geographic reference brands. Again, First National Bank of Guthrie. And those are also going to be alphanumeric brands. Now, the one that I think that adds to it, and I argued and got a paper published, is that we ought to add something which is theme-based branding. What are theme-based brands? Frontier City. What is Frontier City's theme? It's the Old West, right? Their whole layout is, when you go through all the shops and stuff at the beginning, is an Old West Main Street. And they call their rides or name them after various things that have connotations of the Old West. Like what? Well, the Silver Bullet, the Wildcat, that have this Old West themes. What?
They have another ride, a newer ride called the Steel Lasso.
Yeah, what's the one that goes forward and backward through a loop? The Diamondback. All of those are sort of Old West, themes that you have. Diamondback refers to rattlesnakes, Silver Bullet, so Wildcat. What else did you say?
Steel Lasso.
The Steel Lasso.
We're getting another one called the
The Gunslinger.
There you go.
Right. So this is theme-based branding. Where else do we see theme-based branding? And we see it a lot in the entertainment industry. SeaWorld. Right? That's a theme-based brand. It's based on the ocean and oceanography and things like that. So I think that's an important one that we have to recognize. And I think theme-based branding can be particularly important because when we develop the position of the brand in the marketplace, we can make connections, heuristic connections, with things that evoke sort of sentimental feelings. And one of the things that you get with things like Frontier City is it evokes that sort of Western heritage that we pride ourselves on in Oklahoma. And so I think that's one of the things that theme-based branding can be very critical in assisting with. Once you've developed your brand, you need to manage the brand. And Kevin Lane Keller, who's the one that argues that branding is the most important decision that a company will make says there are 10 attributes of brand management that you should know. 10 attributes of brand management are: 1, the brand delivers benefits that customers truly desire. What is it that makes an Apple MacBook more expensive than a Dell laptop? What is the benefit that you really desire that made you buy that Mac?
The software.
You like the software. So you like the iOS system. You like the Apple system better than you like Windows?
A lot better.
Okay, so that's a benefit you truly desire. Most people who have Macs like it because they're less susceptible to what?
Viruses.
To viruses. Is that a big benefit that people desire and demand? Absolutely. Why is it that hackers don't write viruses for Mac? There are just far fewer of them out there. If you want to have the most amount, who has the biggest market share of the OS industry? It's Windows. What else is it that makes the Mac desirable?
Works well with media.
Works very well. If you're media intensive, if you are a graphic artist or things like that, it works really well. Although they're now competing with a Windows-based book that's supposed to be better, and they've got all these graphic artists, particularly the guys who does he's on the commercial that does the really fantastic photography, he edits photography of animal species. And they've got a thing that he said, I couldn't do this with a Mac, and they show him doing it with a pen-type utility on a touch screen interface. And so that's one of the things. Historically, though, Mac has been far more prevalent among the art community because it was capable of running graphic design programs that were much more intensive and much faster processing than the others. So that's one of the things that they truly desire. What is it that we truly desire? I think McDonald's, I talked about this when we talked about positioning. What is it, the benefits that people truly desire in McDonald's, and why is their repositioning not going so well? If you look at the way McDonald's has designed their new stores, they look more like Starbucks all of a sudden. They're getting rid of the playgrounds for a number of reasons. Why are they doing that? Well, A, they want to pick back up those customers that were leaving, particularly for breakfast, which is one of the reasons that they're now doing all-day breakfast. They've redesigned their stores to look more like Starbucks. They've gotten rid of the playgrounds, A, because that has a connotation of not being very sophisticated, and also it's probably a big liability anymore. Can you imagine putting in a playground? The playgrounds we design today are vastly different from the playgrounds that I grew up on. When I was going to school, we had this thing called a merry-go-round, and it was in the middle of an asphalt playground. You know, that's a great way to have traumatic head injuries for children. Put the merry-go-round right on the asphalt, because asphalt is so soft and squishy. So what is it that we truly desire about McDonald's? Fast, convenient, cheap, the same. The brand stays relevant. That's the reason that McDonald's is trying to reposition themselves, to try and stay relevant. They're losing market share, but when you are the largest holder of market share in an industry, you have nowhere to go but down. But they're trying to stay relevant. So what is McDonald's doing? They're offering more things like Starbucks. They're extending their breakfast menu hours. They offer things like the McCafe, which are coffee drinks. McDonald's, and this is a famous case in tort law that all students that are business students that have heard about it absolutely hate. There's a case out of New Mexico where a woman goes through the McDonald's drive-thru, she gets a cup of coffee, and she gets burned because they put the lid on incorrectly and they handed it to her, and she gets third-degree burns all over her body. And students have told me over and over again, because they know I'm a lawyer, they point to that and they say, that's an example of why we need tort reform. That's a frivolous lawsuit right there. Frivolous lawsuit. Well, turns out it wasn't really all that frivolous. She was a little old lady. She was about 80 years old. And McDonald's had done a study that showed that people would drink really crappy coffee if it was hot. If it was really, really hot, they would drink really bad coffee. Why? You can't taste it. It's so hot you can't taste it. And so she spills this all over her lap and her stomach. She ended up with third-degree burns. Now, with third-degree burns, what you do is you take the percentage of your body that is covered by third-degree burns, you add that to your age, and that's the likelihood you have of dying. Not surviving, dying of opportunistic infections. And so, this is somebody who received major burns because McDonald's brewed their coffee at a much higher temperature than other places like Starbucks, which had somewhat better. Although I really think Starbucks is a communist plot, and they serve really crappy coffee. But they tried to be somewhat better. So McDonald's picks up, like, we're losing business to Starbucks. They start serving better coffee, and actually in taste test, Starbucks doesn't come up with the best coffee. You know who has the best coffee for fast food? Dunkin' Donuts. And in every taste test of coffee experts, Dunkin' Donuts generally beats out. And Starbucks actually literally did this to begin with. They served really crappy coffee that tastes burnt to begin with. And why did they do that? Because what they wanted to do is they wanted to upsell you from a $2 cup of coffee to a what?
Latte.
To a latte, which is now you've gone from $2 to $5. Or a Frappuccino or something like that. And so McDonald's actually they redid their coffee. It's no longer served enormously hot. And they've started to add different things to it to make it more like Starbucks. So they're trying to stay relevant in the mind of the consumer. Your pricing strategy has to be based on customers' perceptions of value. Is anybody going to pay $1,000 for a Timex? No, they're not. Why? Doesn't perceived as value. Would they pay the Apple Watch, the high-end one, which is in rose gold? It's $19,000. Are there people that would pay that for? There are people that I can't figure that out. The all-gold Rolex starts at $35,000 now. Would you pay that for a Rolex?
If I could afford it.
I think I'd pay that because Rolex has an established name in the watch industry. One of the things that happened with these watches you've got a $19,000 investment and the battery dies. It was, I don't know.
Could the gold theoretically appreciate in value over time?
I guess it could. Yeah, particularly if you buy it a secondhand Rolex, you can actually get them to stay or hold their value. I wouldn't call that a good investment, but it's maybe not the worst investment that you could make if you just want safe money. And you can always pawn a Rolex.
Right.
So I'm not sure how long you'll be able to pawn the Apple Watch or how long it will stay. And one of the things that's odd to me about the branding strategy with the Apple Watch is why didn't they continue on with the eye theme? That seemed to me to be a mistake. It's not an iWatch, it's an Apple Watch. Is that a branding mistake? I think it could be because everybody really identifies with the eye sort of everything. Having a whole set of devices that integrate well together and are under the same brand umbrella of eye. So you have iPod, iPhone, iTouch, all of that. And I'm not sure why they chose to do that. So pricing strategy is based on customers' perceptions of value. You have proper positioning in the marketplace, so you select the position that you want. You consistently, and that's the next attribute, you consistently project that image. Rolex has consistently projected the image of high-end luxury watch. And actually, what did they start out as? Anybody know? What is one of the things that's interesting about Rolex? They're a dive watch. So Rolex are certified, mine is certified to 3,500 feet. It's well below the depth that you could actually dive to. And so that's what Rolex started out as. So they're a high-end, very accurate dive watch. the brand portfolio and hierarchy makes sense. All right, so I have a video that I want to show you that demonstrates brand portfolio hierarchy making sense. If I can get the computer to come back on. Work.
And now, outside Washington. Welcome back to CNN Business Traveler. I have crossed the Atlantic and am now outside Washington, D.C. 55 years ago, right here, would have been the lobby of the very first Marriott Hotel. What started right here is now a chain of more than 3,000 hotels worldwide. And right at the top of Marriott, today, it's all changed. Today is Bill Marriott's 80th birthday. He's been in the hospitality business for 55 years and is now stepping down as the chief executive of Marriott. Handing over the mantle to the chief operating officer, Ollie Sorensen.
I have said for years to friends, you need the person who tries to follow Bill Marriott. He's an icon of the industry. He's an enormous teacher and mentor to me, as he is to so many across the industry.
I met Bill Marriott at the company's headquarters, where he reflected on a lifetime's work and those who've been along for the ride.
What did you say when I told you I was going to become executive chairman and it's got too big and too complex for me?
Oh, I said, you created it. It's all your fault.
The Marriott story begins in 1927, when the American entrepreneur J.W. Marriott opened his root beer stand in Washington, D.C. 3 decades later, he opened his first hotel.
It was my dad and mom. Right? The first hotel. He built the biggest motor hotel in the world. And when he opened it, it didn't do very well. I just joined the company out of the Navy. I've been in the company 6 months. I said, why don't you let me take a hand at running this thing? He said, you don't know anything about the hotel business. I said, well, that's right, I don't, but neither does anybody else around here. So I can't do any worse than we're doing. So we got the second hotel open in Washington, and the third hotel opened later. And all of a sudden, I figured out we'd make more money in the hotel business than we ever would in the restaurant business.
What's the one thing that has surprised you most?
The fact that we could grow from one hotel to 3,700 hotels, that really shocked me. I thought, you know, it took us 7 years to build 5 hotels, and I thought, well, maybe we'll get to 10 or 15.
And at what point did you look over your shoulder and think, ooh, well, where did that all come from?
Every day.
The rapid growth was achieved with a formula that has come to define today's hotel industry. Many brands, all under one umbrella.
1981, we had a lot of big box hotels, big city hotels. Somebody said, you know, we're going to run out of great locations where we can build these big hotels. We got to do something to grow the company. And let's go and build a hotel for the businessman. We did $1 million worth of research. We asked our customers, what do you want in a hotel? They said a better room at a lower price. I said to our people, are you kidding me? You mean we spent $1 million to find out people want a better room at a lower price? So we built one. We built a 150-room courtyard in downtown, in the suburbs of Atlanta.
And then on it goes from the courtyard, Fairfield, and then you add in Ritz-Carlton.
That's right. Yeah. We have 18 different brands.
Too many?
No, we keep adding. We just added AC hotels in Europe. If we find another niche for a brand, we'll develop another brand.
The job of creating that next brand falls on the company's new CEO, Arnie Sorensen. His task is to keep the Marriott giant moving with the times.
What we see as the future of the core Marriott full-service hotel is a place that obviously provides a great night's sleep, it provides a comfortable room, but it also provides public space which can welcome people and which can invite them to leave and have the lobby. Customers are saying it's no longer enough for me to have a great night's sleep in a big room and in a clean room. I want my senses excited in some way.
Exciting the senses in that way demands a new brand and a controversial move for Marriott. Partnering with Ian Schrager, celebrated arbiter of cool, credited with inventing the boutique hotel concept. The Paramount, the Mondrian, the Sanderson, the Hudson, the Gramercy Park, and now, in this unlikely partnership with Marriott, comes Edition.
The idea is to kind of rethink the hotel business and do the same thing I did 25 years ago when we invented the boutique hotel.
That's the point. 25 years ago, you invented the boutique hotel. It's been done. So what are you going to add to it this time?
This is not a boutique hotel as such. That was a different animal that we created. But the whole idea of doing a hotel, it's supposed to manifest popular culture and who we are today in the same way people do with cars and technology and movies and theater and music. It's the same kind of thing. It's popular culture update.
Okay, so what do we now want today?
We want something very unassuming and very comfortable. We're not looking for design on steroids. We're looking for good old-fashioned, good taste and good style and great service at a reasonable value.
Together, Schrager and Marriott hope to achieve what has so far eluded the big hotel companies, with the exception of Starwood's W, the lifestyle of boutique, without compromising the good night's sleep.
What's happened in this space broadly is that the folks who are delivering this lifestyle experience are not also delivering great customer service. Even Ian would say the great hotels that he started in the early 80s and continued into the 90s offered a wonderful design and a wonderful nightlife, but a lousy night's sleep.
The message echoes clearly from both camps. No more style over substance. Out with design on steroids. In with style and comfort.
So, as I asked you before, will you have a chair that's comfortable that I can sit in?
Oh, good point. Because you know me and my chair. No three-legged chair.
No three-legged chairs!
No tricks.
No tricks! A chair I can sit in!
And comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Working, you can work in it.
On a desk that I
You
have.
can read it, and good lighting. Those are the things that...
Have you grown up?
We're not grown up.
The brand launched last year with hopes to grow the concept quickly into a chain of dozens of locations.
You sold out a chain. Marriott, you would have walked over hot coals rather than done a deal with a chain.
I would have walked over hot coals rather than to sell out. But what Marriott offers me was something that I couldn't really do before. So to me, it's the opposite of selling out. It's like, hey, let's come up with this great idea and let's keep it to ourselves and the family and do it.
Coming up after the break, a good night's sleep with our Hollywood star, Richard Gere.
Okay, so I think this illustrates nicely that the brand portfolio and hierarchy makes sense. We will finish up with this. I have another video that I want to watch on branding next time, so we will do that. And I will see you on Thursday.